This episode is brought to you by Clear Peak Fertility. Clear Peak Fertility and Wellness is the Denver area's newest clinic for inclusive fertility care. That means they support every person's path to parenthood. From fertility consultations, diagnostic workups, women's wellness exams, weight loss support, and treatments like IUI, including donor sperm, they focus on the whole person. Discover expert, compassionate care at clearpeakfertility.com and schedule your consult today. Oh, and if you get in touch this February, Clear Peak is offering a $50 discount on new consults to our listeners. Just let them know you heard about them on CityCast Denver. That's clearpeakfertility.com.
Today on CityCast Denver, TikTok was gone, and then it wasn't. Federal spending was frozen, and then unfrozen. Mass deportation raids were scheduled for Thursday in Aurora, and then they weren't. It's been a confusing week here in Denver, so we're talking about how our mayor and the rest of us have been navigating the new whiplash politics. Plus, all the other big stories of the week, from the Colfax Swastika to the local Democrats' next great hope. Today's Friday, January 31st. I'm Paul Karolyi, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city where the Trump administration is investigating East High School's new all-gender bathroom. But the bathroom they should be investigating is the one after I'm done in there.
For what? What do we got? Is it toxic waste? Or?
Just leave it up to your imagination.
Oh, okay.
Could be anything. I don't know. I was so nervous about that joke. Oh, my God. Sometimes I'm happy about them. Sometimes it's like, not trying to make light of a hard situation. Also, just had to do that.
Just a man with IBS, all right?
Sorry, thank you. Let's get to the show. It's Friday. We're in the 5280 Magazine studios. Our host, Bree Davies, is out today, unfortunately, but I have a couple of great guests joining me today. One of our favorite regulars, fresh off the premiere of his terrific documentary, Bad Indian. He's our man inside Casa Bonita. Stand-up comedian Joshua Emerson is here. Welcome back.
Hi, hello. Yeah, you're welcome for me being here. This is great.
You.
Yeah, and listeners, you're welcome for listening to me. Yeah.
People love you on the show. We get comments all the time.
Yeah, no, I'm building a real relationship. Like, people will see me in the wild. Hey, stop whispering me if, like, is that you, Josh, in the gorilla suit? Don't do that.
Actually, speaking of the gorilla suit, it's been a minute since you've been on the show. I think our audience would love an update on the Casa Bonita Performers Union.
Yeah, sure. So right now, the negotiating committee has been selected. Yours truly is on that committee. I'm not going to let anybody know who else is on that committee right now, but we are getting into the process of probably going to focus on safety first with an MOU, but then going to go ahead and figure out what the actual what we want to negotiate. So we're in that process.
So strategizing before the talks with the company, with Matt and Trey.
Right, and the union and the company have begun the dialogue.
Okay. How's the vibe? Does it feel good so far?
It's interesting. I would say in terms of like the big thing is that, especially since everybody voted for it, it's a big thing of like, do your job right now. This is the most important time to do your job, and that's what we do. So. Cool. All right. Well, we'll keep following that. Also joining us on CityCast Denver today for the very first time, if there is a big story breaking in Denver, odds are he's already on the scene. From Denver 7, welcome to the show, Brandon Richard.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so excited to have you. As you know, we've been talking about doing this for a while. Yeah. I've been so excited to have you. Your reporting is excellent. And I want to talk about one thing you actually had this week. You got an interview with RTD CEO Deborah Johnston.
Yes.
Months after, famously, she dodged your questions at the Capitol. She walked away from you.
Angry eyes.
On video. Very angry eyes.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a difficult question, a controversial question. It wasn't, me catching her off guard or something. I was talking to her and I simply asked, when can RTD expect the new police chief? And she just stared at me for like 5 seconds, turned and walked away. And it was the most bizarre thing I've ever encountered before.
It was. I watched it again last night, and I think she sort of softly said thank you as she was turning. It was like, what do you mean thank you? Like, what are you talking about?
Right. It was so weird.
But then you sat down with her this week.
I did, yes. This past week, we were able to do a one-on-one sit-down interview with her. I did bring that up because I'm like, the last time I saw you, you walked away from me at the Capitol when I was asking what was a very simple question. And we talked about that. We talked about, sort of what she's hoping RTD will be able to accomplish this year, the progress they've been making on their maintenance.
The buses on time and such.
That was a fascinating interview, too.
Was it? What was she like when you addressed that moment? Like, how did she talk about it? Did she acknowledge that she was being just extremely weird?
Well, she said that there was an investigation taking place involving their then police chief, Joel Fitzgerald.
Ooh.
And he had been fired like a few days before this happened, before my interaction with her at the Capitol. And so basically that's why she said, she didn't want to talk about it. But I'm like, how is asking when you're going to hire a new police chief going to affect the investigation? Because that's sort of what will happen a lot of times when public officials don't want to talk. They say there's an investigation. Oh, we can't talk about it.
Sure.
We can't say anything about it. But, I didn't think just asking when RTD is going to have a new police chief would be a controversial thing for somebody to walk away instead of saying no comment or I can't even talk about that.
Did she acknowledge how cold she was, or like how she said thank you, but it was like dripping with vitriol,
Yeah. No.
Any apology at all, or just more?
No, she just explained.
She has had a tough tenure. You know what I mean? At RTD,
she has. I think she's gotten burned in the press. I think she feels like she's been misrepresented. I mean, this is just me speculating. Like some of the coverage from like our friend Nate Miner talking to like anonymous sources, formerly her colleagues, like. He's talking about how much she doesn't like Denver. I think she's got lawyers, she's got PR people in her ears at all times, and she's now self-conscious about it and like very cagey. And I mean, I wouldn't want to talk to the press either if I was her.
Get some wins,
but she should
get some wins, and because press loves to talk about positive stuff. It's one of the it's the positive and the negative, right? That's really what like moves, gets people to websites or it gets people to watch stuff. And so like you get wins, and they'll talk about you in a totally different way.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about a positive thing right now. A little bit of business for the show. We're doing a cool event in March. It's called Heyday.
Heyday indoor market.
Indoor fair with
is.
urban flair.
Do we have urban flair?
Oh, for sure we got urban. We got our signature Western version of urban flair. We got the cowboy boots there clean.
That's true.
No cow poop on the cowboy boots at Heyday.
Yeah. Well, mine will have cow poop on it, but that's for a different reason. I'm really excited. I'm going to be emceeing this with Bree. I don't know if you guys know Bree. She hosts this show, but I'm very. Paul's going to be there. I don't know if this is confirmed yet, but I think he is going to be at the membership booth. So if you ever wanted to meet Paul in person and see how tall he is, make sure you mention that to him. All right, when you see Paul, be like, "Oh, you're so much taller than I thought you were."
You're going to get me more embarrassed than I was when I told the poop joke earlier.
Definitely taller than I thought you were.
I appreciate
Is that true?
Yes. Listeners, that's a little, get your tickets now. Members get discounted tickets. Sign up to be a member today. You get that discounted ticket. You get a bunch of extra special bonuses, free crap we're giving away. Really like good stuff. Beanies. Members get beanies. CityCast Denver beanies.
I haven't got a beanie yet.
You'll get one.
Give me one. You guys
Are
want
you a member? You are a member.
I'm a member, and I still get.
You're going to get a beanie.
Thank goodness.
So, one more thing before we get to our top story. This is a weird ongoing thing that has turned into a running something on the show. I don't know how to describe this. I never thought this would happen, but last time I had to make a correction on the show. Someone wrote in to suggest that we name the segment where I have to make corrections apologies, which was funny and also mortifying. But then after that one, someone else had their own pitch for a name for the segment where I have to make a correction. So I'm going to try that out. It's a segment called Paul Correctly, because Paul Karolyi made an error earlier this week, and Paul Correctly is here to correct it.
That's funny.
It's not bad. So here's the actual correction. I was wrong on Tuesday when I said that the UFCW Local 7 has not made public the contract that they negotiated with King Soopers 3 years ago, the one that they're trying to negotiate a follow-up on right now. You can actually see that on their website. They publish all their contracts. And actually, King Soopers has published their most recent offer. So they're being much more transparent than I realized. I should have looked into that more thoroughly. Sorry about that, everybody. But thank you for texting to the person who texted. And shout out to Ryan B. for the suggestion of the segment where I talk about how I'm wrong sometimes. All right, let's get to our top story. And I'm so glad, Brandon, you're here for it, because you've been, like I said, at the center of all these things. And I mean, it's a huge story. It's really two things happening at the same time. We're going to talk about two things right now. We're going to talk about the thing the mayor, Mike Johnston, wants to be paying attention to, and then there's the other thing he seems to keep getting pulled back into, which is this huge national fight over immigration and newcomers in Denver. But we're going to start with what he wants to be talking about, which is the press conference you were at on Wednesday, where he announced his big goals for 2025. Tell us about the scene.
Yeah, so this was held at the Central Library, and it was a big event. It had community leaders and city leaders all gathered there. The mayor unveiled his 2025 goals. Most of them were similar to the goals that he had set last year. 6 different areas that he really wants to focus on over the next year. I think the 3 main ones that people pay most attention to: public safety, homelessness, and affordable housing, just because those are really huge issues. And so with respect to homelessness, he wants to get 2,000 more people who are experiencing homelessness off the streets and into some sort of temporary housing. He wants to move 2,000 people who are already in temporary housing into permanent housing. He wants the city to help, create or preserve 3,000 affordable housing units over the next year, and wants to reduce gun shootings by 15%. He says he was able to do that last year. I want to say 23% last year, a reduction in gun shootings. So yeah, that's what the focus was supposed to be on there. And of course, as you mentioned, some other things took over.
We'll talk about the other stuff in a second, but I do think these goals are important, and I think they're kind of interesting what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I won't talk about this part too much, but the shelter 2,000 more unhoused people, that goal, he talked about that on CityCast 3 months ago. Folks, I saw the headlines this week. We had the news. Listen to CityCast. Joshua, what did you make of the goals, though? Do you think he's focusing on the right stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we still have, all those things are very important to voters and to citizens of Denver. What's interesting, though, is that, you just had those 16th Street stabbings, just a couple weeks ago. And not that that is indicative of the state of the city, but that's sort of what sticks in people's minds, And so at that end, people sort of, I was reading some of, the more progressive groups sort of giving him some pretty terrible grades for coming through. So he is facing, I feel like backlash from both ways, you know what I mean? From the progressives and from conservatives. He's had a weird first couple years.
I find him fascinating.
Yeah.
I find him totally fascinating. He has such big ambitions.
Yeah.
But now he's in this position where the rubber has hit the road and the reality is setting in, and he's I think he's now being tested. I was talking to someone from the mayor's office last week. It was a week after the stabbings, and we were just talking about what it's been like for them, and she was that week was the first real test of our administration, was that uproar over that stabbing spree and how they had to handle that, and then his veto over the needle exchange bill. And I think that we'll talk about the immigration stuff, but just he doesn't seem as confident as he did a year ago.
Well, with the 16 stabbings earlier this month, he held a press conference on the 16th Street Mall.
Yes, of course.
And it was with the police chief. He was there as well. And they picked that location, I think, just to give people reassurance that this is safe. But of course, some people would say, well, the mayor has a security detail, so he's probably always going to be safe. But the press conference was interrupted by someone walking by. I don't know who this guy was, and he started yelling at the mayor, saying all these bad things. And just to see the shock on the mayor's face, it was just really weird. And it seemed like what he was saying was not what this guy was experiencing. He was like, you're saying everything is great, but we have all these problems. It's not great, Mayor.
Democrats are burning this city down, I believe was what the angry heckler yelled with such emphasis that it just stuck in my head, and I'm sure it did for other people.
I I look around town, like I'm on downtown all the time. I'm all over Denver because of comedy shows. It doesn't really feel like the city's burning down. So that type of anger, I feel separated from. It's hard for me to empathize.
I agree. I think there's some people that, like the Do Better Denver Instagram account. We've talked about this. Like, it's a small minority of people who feel this way, who have this rage and these suspicions that they're not being told everything about what's really going on, and they're very angry about unhoused people. But like, that's a small number of people. But there's another bigger group of people that maybe voted for Lisa Calderon in the mayor's race 2 years ago, or maybe voted for Kelly Brough and think the mayor is like, he's single-minded, maybe think that he's a little bit like not listening to a broad group of people, or maybe not like bringing people along on his mission to like achieve these very big, ambitious goals, which, you know, admirable, but the collaborative spirit, that's the criticism I've heard from some people who are like working in the city, working close to the city.
I've heard the collaborative spirit thing. I remember talking to a progressive friend earlier this week, and she's like, wow, you really like Mike Johnston. I was like, I'm actually pretty critical of Mike Johnston, but it feels like you're being unfair in terms of like things that he's actually accomplished, or sort of how he is trying to actively attack these issues head on.
Well, he's got tough circumstances too. Like his goal for housing people, he's housed a ton of people. He's changed a lot of people's lives. But at the same time, the number of unhoused people in the city keeps going up every year.
Yeah. And when you set these goals, when you make it so public and, you know, they're such ambitious goals, then if you don't meet them, then that just, I think, invites a lot more criticism, because now those of us in the press, we're going to see these goals and we're going to be checking throughout the year to say, you know, to see if you've accomplished them. As you said, he is very ambitious. He's a very ambitious person. But sometimes I think that can backfire.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles, plus a professional measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Let's move on to the biggest story of the week. I mean, this is what people are actually talking about and what he's probably actually thinking about a lot. I suggest that he might not be able to put his full focus on these goals because his attention, like mine and many Denverites, was on the rollout of President Trump's immigration crackdown, which kicked off in earnest this week. Tons of rumors, tons of news about the Republican-controlled Congress, what they're doing, what Trump's doing. I want to talk about the mayor because the piece of this that was relevant to him was there was this committee, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, invited Johnston to testify in front of them in Washington on February 11th on Denver's sanctuary city policies. The Trump administration is investigating these. But the mayor is reportedly undecided as of this taping. And Brandon, you asked him about this yesterday afternoon. I want to play the clip and then I want to ask you about this.
You have been asked to testify before the U.S. House Oversight Committee. Do you plan to do that?
I'm certainly open to having a conversation with Congress on what they can do to address federal immigration reform and how they can help cities like ours. So we've reached back out to the commission. We're in conversation with them, and we'll determine if it's a productive conversation that would benefit Denverites for me to go. We're open to it. If it's not productive, we don't need to. So haven't made a final decision, but we're in talks with their committees about what the parameters might be.
Tell us about that, Brandon.
Yeah, so the Oversight Committee is wanting to talk to the mayor of Denver, the mayors of Boston, Chicago, and New York City as well. What do all these cities have in common? They have progressive Democratic mayors. And if you know anything about Congress, then you know that this committee, which I think has Marjorie Taylor Greene, it has Lauren Boebert on it, I think...
that could be the Mike Johnston-Boebert showdown that all Denverites have been waiting for.
Yeah, it really could. So I would expect it would be a very partisan hearing with people grandstanding, probably on both sides. And so the mayor has to decide, does he want to put himself in this position? He's someone that strikes me as not very confrontational. He's kind of cool and calm and collected. And I just don't see Mike Johnston like getting in this verbal shouting match with somebody on Congress. But I do see people on this committee wanting to take it to him, including possibly Lauren Boebert, because you remember last year they had like a Twitter spat.
Yes. I do remember that. I don't remember what it was over, though. Probably this.
It was
honestly.
immigration.
Yeah.
Because the mayor had released a guidebook to help other cities welcome immigrants into their communities. Lauren Boebert said something about it, as I recall. And then the mayor tweeted back something to her and brought up the Beetlejuice.
Yeah, the Beetlebart
incident. So
they want to grill his ass. And he's trying to weigh, am I going to get out of this ahead, or am I just going to look bad?
But it's an opportunity. You look at Secretary Pete Buttigieg and like the way that he's been able to take those grandstanding Congress hearings and being able to push his message forward too, like real truth, and attack the grandstanding with facts.
He's good at it.
Yeah,
he's really good in those moments because he has the policy and he's good with words, and like he can make those viral moments happen. Like I think that's what these hearings are about in Congress right now. Is 100%. That those like little clips of like, can you like outwit somebody, or can you make someone look stupid or something, and like. And if I'm Mike Johnston, I don't know.
This is the way that Mike Johnston gets onto TikTok. You know what I mean? Is that he has a good congressional hearing, and then that gets clipped off by the whole political side of TikTok and gets over and over again. If he really wants to get his message out to younger people or to the national stage, I think he should take the opportunity and use it as an opportunity to just try to hit facts into Congress.
That is a lot to ask. Because as you said, Pete Buttigieg is very good on it. Pete Buttigieg is always going on Fox News, and not everybody has those skills, though.
No, he's a special talent, a political talent for sure. I mean, regardless of what you think about his ideas, he has got the talent.
But if the mayor decides that he doesn't want to testify, this committee could very well subpoena him.
Interesting.
Congress has the power to subpoena people to get them to testify. He said he doesn't know if it's going to get to that point yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does, just because I think the Republicans on that committee, they want this showdown. They want to be able to grill all of these progressive mayors on this issue. It's a hot button issue for them.
I mean, especially Mayor Johnston, too, because Denver has been such a focal point of this Operation Aurora situation. It's interesting that they didn't invite Mike Kaufman, the mayor of Aurora, because Kaufman and Johnston over the last
put them right next to each other.
Because they've been feuding back and forth over who's responsible for this whole Venezuelan gang situation. I know you've reported on this, Brandon. Can you catch up people who aren't familiar with this feud?
Yeah, so Mayor Kaufman in Aurora is basically blaming Mayor Johnston in Denver, saying that somehow he pushed all of these immigrants into Aurora and did not give the city of Aurora any heads up. And this has been talked about here in recent months. There's been all of these conspiracy theories online as well, saying that somehow the governor was involved in working with these nonprofit groups that Denver was working with and pushing all of these people into Aurora, not telling the city of Aurora that all of these folks were coming over. And so Kaufman is interesting because he kind of has been all over the place on this particular issue. But now that's where he's at right now, is blaming Mike Johnston.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Governor Polis say that Colorado is not a sanctuary state?
He did.
Which is a big break, I think, from the most important city in his state. So it's pretty interesting.
And of course, Denver doesn't consider itself a sanctuary city.
Right.
I think the term they like to describe is a welcoming city.
Interesting. Well, we do have these laws in the state that I know the national Republicans are talking about trying to like override or pressure states to supersede or like reverse. Like we have this law that says local and state law enforcement are not allowed to work with ICE and immigration patrol. So like that's the actual like policy battle that could be, we could see some change on. It really, Polis's role is interesting because you're right, Joshua. He has been kind of like sucking up to Trump and Elon a little bit, and now he's talking about like we do want immigrants who are criminals to be deported, the ones who are criminals. But like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, people are so scared about this right now. I have heard from so many people in my life who are like, the uncertainty around the rumors and the raids this week have been, it's terrifying. It's distracting. It's been hard. Joshua, are you feeling it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, I'm a little desert rat. I grew up in Phoenix and went to school in Tucson. So, but this is all. I grew up in Phoenix during the time of SB 1070, where they're allowed to ask you for your documentation if you look brown, without cause, and with Joe Arpaio, and so like this has sort of been like prevalent through my entire life. But I also grew up going to school with dreamers, and it really humanizes newcomers. This idea of like we all live in this place. There wasn't really a separation between me and my friend Eddie Hernandez, that we were both students at Alta Loma in middle school, and we went to the same high school, and he went to ASU, I went to U of A, and there wasn't any like difference between us, despite the fact that he wasn't a full citizen. And now it's sad because I see a lot of my friends, and they're like, what can we do to sort of try to get in front of this? What can we do to sort of should we get married? I mean, and people are getting married for citizenship reasons as opposed to like love or something like that, and it's a weird problem to sort of have. It's sad. I'm like, not only am I empathetic, especially as a Native American, where everybody in my mind is an immigrant, so. Now that we sort of have this new sort of experiment, this United States, I think one of the things that have best served this country throughout its history has been its ability to sort of welcome newcomers and incorporate them into the country and into the economy. And it's sad that I mean, fear isn't good for the economy. It benefits only a few people. And so, yeah, I'm scared.
And of course, President Trump's talked about how, the mass deportations will focus on those with criminal records. And I think to a lot of people, they just assume that all of the people that you see being boarded on these planes are killers, or they've committed this heinous crime that I think everybody would agree is horrible and they shouldn't be here. But there was a New York Times article I was reading this past weekend that had some good numbers, and it mentioned that a lot of people who are convicted criminals have been convicted of minor traffic offenses, but they're still technically considered a criminal. So a lot of that nuance doesn't play well on social media, and that drives me crazy because I know a lot of people just look at the headlines. They don't dive into the numbers, and when you try to, it looks like you're defending criminals, and you're not. You're just like, there's more here than you think.
I mean, it's politics, it's media, it's a maelstrom right now. It's hard to discern truth in 2025 in America.
Because even some of those planes, that were flying to Mexico weren't allowed to land, and so they had to come back, and more money.
Yeah. And we heard this week, as we know, like if those planes can't land and people have to come back, there's this new detention plan for the Buckley Space Force Base.
Yeah.
After, by the way, earlier this week, you heard on CityCast, the ICE facility run by the GEO Group, they invested $70 million to expand that thing. Apparently not enough, and we got to use the Buckley Space Force Base for this detention facility. That's how big the plan is for this. I don't know. Brandon, before we move on, what are you watching as a reporter? What are your questions here as this thing rolls out? People are so confused about what's happening.
Well, I think when the actual ICE raids start and what those are going to look like. There was a raid this past weekend. It's come to our understanding that this was led by DEA. ICE participated. So I guess it wasn't an official ICE raid, but so many people in the community are worried about what this is going to mean, because the border czar for the Trump administration says that, if you are an undocumented immigrant and you just happen to be at a location where these agents, are arresting somebody, then you will be arrested too. And that's why a lot of people are very concerned. We know that many of Donald Trump's supporters, they don't want to just deport criminal immigrants. They want to deport everybody who is undocumented here. And so I'm going to be watching to see how many undocumented folks who are not criminals get wrapped up in all of this?
That is a great question. We'll be watching that too. And listeners, we want to hear from you. What are you paying attention to here? How are you trying to find meaning in this maelstrom? As always, the immigration hotline is open here at CityCast Denver, 720-500-5418. Call in, leave us your name, leave us your neighborhood in a text or a voicemail to 720-500-5418. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Wins and Fails. All right, we're back. It's time for Rocky Mountain Highs and Lows, aka Wins and Fails. Each of us brought a recent local something we think is a win and a something we think is a fail, and we're going to talk about them. I got some good ones this week. This is a big week in news, and lots of wins, lots of fails. Joshua, do you want to start with a fail?
With a fail, yeah. The freeze on federal funding. What the hell, you know?
The freeze that was.
Yeah, I just terrifying. That like this is our new reality where any day you can wake up and be like, oh no, is my partner going to be able to have disability beyond this month? That type of thing that used to be stable, you know, like the whole point that you buy treasury bonds in the first place is the government's relatively stable, just thrown into chaos.
Part of the shock and awe strategy that President Trump is undertaking right now. I mean, there's just been so many executive orders and actions he's taking. It's hard for the news to keep up, quite honestly.
I tell you, it's working. I'm shocked and awed. It
is working. It has been so hard to keep up. We had an episode earlier this week about this immigration stuff. We recorded it in the morning. By the afternoon, I'm like, is any of this relevant anymore?
Right.
There's this whole Buckley thing, and then some plans for raids that were supposed to be on Thursday that didn't end up happening. The confusion is part of it. Shock and awe is a great reference for this. I mean, the DeepSeek thing, the whole like the market crash with NVIDIA, the TikTok turnaround. It's incredible. My mind is racing.
I wish I was born in like simpler times. You know what I mean? Like it's exhausting to wake up every day. You know, for the past decade, it feels like. It really feels, I maybe this is something that a lot of millennials can like commiserate with, like being the generation that sort of like was able to first internalize 9/11 and watch it happen, to like going through like 2008 like housing recession and then you know Obama, then Trump, and then COVID and all of this. I'm tired. Like I'm tired. I wanted to sleep.
It's been one thing after another for our generation. Really since 9/11. I think it goes back that far.
Yeah.
Brandon, you want to give us your fail?
So my fail is the state of Colorado released the traffic fatalities that occurred in 2024. There was some good news. I think there was like a 5% reduction in traffic fatalities, so that was good news. But about half of the fatalities, people were not wearing their seatbelts. And this is like a pet peeve for me. I go back home to Oklahoma all the time, and like I'll be giving my relatives a ride, and they just will not put on their seatbelt. I have to tell them, put on your seatbelt. And I think back, and I grew up that way. Just people will get in the car and just drive, and they won't ever put their seatbelt on. And for me, it comes automatically. I do it without thinking. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't. And we made some progress, but much more needs to be done to get people to wear those seatbelts.
Well, that's a great one. I mean, yeah, good reminder. Wear the seatbelt.
Yeah, Tupac wore his seatbelt, all right? And he was gangster as hell, okay? Wear your seatbelt.
All right, I'll go next. My fail goes to this whole swastika situation on East Colfax. Have you all seen this?
With the stone honestly, thrown through it?
The whole thing, honestly, every aspect of it, I think, is a fail because there's this historic building called the Austin Building across from the Carla Madison Rec Center. Earlier this month, someone put a swastika up in the window. Horrible. Gross, you know? Not cool.
Right.
But then, you know, there were some protests and then it goes online. People start seeing the picture. This becomes a broader conversation. Everybody hates it. And then someone goes and chucks a rock through the window, which honestly, I also don't like. This kind of like violence and like the heightening tension in the city makes me feel like on edge, makes me feel vulnerable. Like it's just all of the hate going around on both sides. It's like the violence, the anger, the rage, the hate, a freaking swastika on the window. Everything is a fail about this to me.
What should people be doing with the rage then?
I like the protests. I saw there was a woman out there with a sign standing in front of the swastika. Like, I feel like if I was that's the message I would want visitors to Denver to see. Like, there's a swastika on the window, but there's also a group of people out here every day protesting this. More speech is the cure for speech that you don't like, not violence.
Yeah. I will say you got to fight fascism every time you see it. It's one of those things where it could just creep in and normal people can do terrible things underneath that umbrella. Mm-hmm. Fascism is terrifying, and for the first time in my life, it really feels like it can have like a real hold in this country.
Honestly, yes. It's not a theoretical conversation anymore. Like, this whole debate, like, it's a real thing that we have to deal with, and it is scary.
Yeah.
But
you got to be careful with violence.
We have to talk about it. We got to work on it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the good stuff, the wins. I will go first.
Ooh.
I will take the privilege and go first. And my win goes to a person I've chatted with a few times in the last few months. He's a representative in the State House, Manny Rutinel. He's a Democrat who represents Commerce City, and he announced this week that he is running for Congress. The election will be in 2 years, but he is running against Gabe Evans, the Republican who just won the District 8 seat. And the win goes to Manny. I mean, announcing a run for Congress itself, like, good for you. But what was impressive about this is that he raised $400,000 in 24 hours, which was a huge, like, that's enormous. For reference, Gabe Evans, when he announced his campaign, in the first 4 months, he only raised $273,000. What Manny did in a day. Now, yes, there's a political environment where maybe Gabe Evans is being kind of quiet on immigration, and people that support, like Democrats, are looking for someone to change things and are eager to change the, who's in power in Washington. $400,000 was huge win for Manny.
Yeah, good for him.
I was definitely surprised by that.
Yeah?
Because, I mean, he is a new state representative, mm-hmm. and to raise that much money says a lot. And it's going to be interesting to see who ultimately emerges as the Democratic nominee in CD8.
Definitely.
We'll see who else throws their hat into the ring. It's one of the most divided districts in the country. That Caraveo and Gabe Evans contest was a lot of people were watching across the country. I mean, we had Speaker Mike Johnston come to support Gabe Evans. And so it's one to watch in 26 for sure.
Absolutely. I thought this was a good indicator of where the liberals are putting their energy, putting their anger after a week of the Trump administration. Interesting guy. He led a big AI regulation this year too, Manny. Super interesting guy. Well, we might talk to him at some point.
I mean, somebody believes in him. I mean, 400,000 sells a ton.
God, seriously. Brandon, give us your win.
Well, we mentioned this earlier. I was able to sit down with Deborah Johnson from RTD to do a one-on-one interview with her. Yes, asking why she turned away after I asked a very simple question, but just sort of going through some of the other challenges that RTD faces. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to share more of that interview in the days to come, because I think it was a really interesting conversation. There was a moment when you could just see things change in the interview. I think it was when I asked that question, why'd you turn and walk away from me? But as you mentioned, RTD, her in particular, have lots of problems. And, she is a veteran transit exec. She does have a lot of experience, but she's getting all of this criticism from passengers and other people who really want RTD to succeed. I find that the people most critical of RTD are the people who really want it to work.
Yeah,
they are
absolutely.
really passionate about public transit, and they just get frustrated with just the way RTD operates.
It is a frustrating thing. The fact that the light rail out to Golden doesn't go to the city center and goes to City Hall instead, and you have to figure out that last mile problem between the end of the light rail to like the actual part of Golden that would be nice, Mm-hmm. And then to see places like Arvada, Old Town Arvada, be able to utilize the light rail so successfully, but then the Colfax corridor can't seem to, like, Lakewood can't develop a good development plan around the light rail. And and then even like in Phoenix, like you can use your ticket to like a Suns game as a free fare for the light rail into that. Why don't we have something like that for Nuggets?
I know why. I
What's
talked
that?
to the Kroenke sports and entertainment people back when they were pushing the Ball Arena plan before the vote on city council. And I was like, how come you all are talking a lot about transportation? How come you're not are you doing anything like working with RTD at all? And they were like, we've reached out to RTD about a ticket voucher thing, a discount, and we haven't heard back.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. Anyway, good on you, Brandon, for getting that interview. We'll look for that at Denver 7. We'll link to that when it's out. Joshua, what's your win this week?
My win this week comes from the Denver subreddit. Little Spooky Tawny. Admittedly, she is introvert and kind of was just feeling lonely. And
Shout out to introverts.
Yeah, absolutely. And she was like, "Hey, does anybody want to get a coffee?" And like a little meetup. And like 8 people showed up, and Spooky Tawny actually went to the wrong location of the event that she created, which was really cute. And like watching it like real time in terms of like the updates on the Reddit posts, I thought was really cute. And then to see the final picture, it's actually the most upvoted thing for this week on the Denver subreddit. And I just thought it's just I mean, loneliness is definitely an epidemic, for a lot of us, and for people to sort of organically and sort of sweetly be able to find connection from other people that are feeling the same things, I thought was really cool and sweet.
That's such a nice one. I was watching that as well. We'll put a link to that in the show notes for people to check it out. But that was fun to watch this week. And if you're looking for some connection, get your tickets now to Heyday, an indoor fair with urban flair, March 8th. We'll put a link in the show notes. Joshua will be there.
That's right.
Maybe Brandon will be there.
Brandon?
Maybe.
Can we get commitment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it. Okay. You two, this was so much fun. Thanks for coming in and talking to me this morning. See y'all next time.
Peace and love. Shout out Tupac.
My first podcast, I survived.
Yay. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Olivia Jewel Love, Francisco Kilgore, Lizzie Goldsmith, and me, Paul Karolyi. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Bree Davies is our host, and we'll be back soon. Our music is by Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Sleepy Tawny about us the next time you see her. If you love the show, come see us in person at Heyday. It's an indoor fair with urban flair on March 8th. That's a Saturday. Get your tickets now at heydaydenver.com. You can sign up for our daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you next week.